Hello there. Happy Friday evening for once. I'm not in my home recording this. It's probably the first time I'm not recording a video episode within my normal spot down in Richmond in probably three months now. I have a clear background for those that watch on YouTube with my childhood room back at my dad's house as we're getting ready to go on vacation tomorrow. Yes, my room was painted black and gold for the Pittsburgh Steelers. No, you all cannot judge me for that. And that's for sure. But we're continuing the player grades today with Marcus Pettersson, what the team should do with him over the offseason, how good was he this season, what should he work on going into next season if he is on the team. Also going to get into the Teena Murray announcement today, as she is now the Senior Vice President of Integrated Performance, what that means for the Penguins moving forward. And also a thought on the Penguins-Flyers rivalry, as John Tortorella officially took the Flyers job today. And for the first time in potentially a long time, we could see the Flyers-Penguins rivalry come back this season. So those will be the three main topic points for today's episode, and that's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So let's keep chugging along here. We're almost done, almost through the full team now with the player season reviews. It's going to probably finish up right by the time free agency opens, probably a little bit before, but still a lot of draft stuff coming. One of my good buddies, again, shouted on so many times on the show, J_A155 Jason. He's going to be coordinating me with a draft plan. He's going to go over his big board with me. I'll compare, mine to his after, I look at some of the players that could be in play at 21, and that's probably going to be a full draft session. I don't think he's going to come on the show, but we're definitely going to compare and potentially have just a big board episode that maybe goes 40 to 50 minutes as like that big draft special right before that happens. So that's my main plan right now when it comes to the NHL draft. I know I did not really do a lot of draft content last year. I apologize for that. Again, it's probably the one area where my expertise is not nearly as good as some other people who are very good at what they do at that. So, but I still want to do, incorporate just at least a little bit of draft stuff because the Penguins, they obviously have a first round pick this year. So definitely want to see who could be in play here when that pick rolls around when the draft is in a few weeks. But let's jump right into it. So continuing with the defense right now, as we've done through basically all the forwards, let's get to Marcus Pettersson. So we've already done Brian Newman, we've done John Marino, so now let's do his partner, Pettersson. So at 5v5 this year, played almost 1,100 minutes. Probably had his best season in terms of Corsi. So when he was on the ice, Penguins had about 53.5% of the shot attempts per 60. That is a very good number. That is a career high for Pettersson. He was 51.3, 51.8, 51.3 the last 3 years. I think a lot of that this year has to do with him mostly playing with Marino. It's massive for him that he gets to play with a partner that just really understands his game. I think goals for, goals against, 52.5% of those. That's a little bit down from where it was last year. He was on the ice for 58% out of the actual goals for per 60. Expected goals percentage, 54.4%. That's the highest number for his career so far. His second best one was in 2018-19 when he came over from the Anaheim Ducks. When he was on the ice, the Penguins had 52.5% of the scoring chances. He's been above 50% with that for 4 years in a row. High danger-wise, 194, 148 against, 56.2, that comes out to 56.2%. That's the second best number of his career outside of the 2019 season. High danger goals for 25, high danger goals against 23. And again, that's now five. That's now every season that he's played in the NHL, his high danger actual goals for percentage is well over 50%. Now we go to Hockey Viz's stuff with Michael Blake McCurdy. Even strength offense, again, that's not really his bread and butter. Minus 0.13 expected goals for per 60. A lot of blue around the net front. That's not good. That means he's generating less chances right there. Some red by the right far boards, the left far boards, but defensively, he's a rock, and that's mainly what he is known for. 0.22 expected goals against per 60 minutes. A whole blob of blue in front of the net. That's exactly what you want. There's really only a little bit of red towards like the sides of the net, but it's very small. All the other red is right up by the point and stuff. And he's been great defensively ever since he came. I know some people think he's soft or whatever in front of the net, but I've never really believed that opinion. At least from what I've watched him, I thought his net front coverage has been fine. Obviously, he should have been. They should have had that penalty in Game 7 against the Rangers with Lafreniere. I will probably never let that go, because if the ref actually calls that with 6 minutes left, I mean, the Penguins probably win that game. The Rangers would only have 4 minutes left, unless, of course, they score the shorthanded goal. But, I do think Pettersson is a player that's picked on a little too much by the fan base. I mean, sure, he's not going to wow you with his offense, though. I will say, down the stretch and into the playoffs, he was looking like a modern day Paul Coffey with how he was handling the puck. And I'm like, why haven't we gotten this for 3 to 4 straight years now? It is definitely a little weird that it all of a sudden just came out of nowhere. And, my only hope is that it continues going into next season. I know some really don't like his contract, but, he makes $4 million for playing strong defense offensively. Yeah, it could use a little bit more, but, I'm still fine with paying him $4 million. But, the problem runs with this. $4 million for Pettersson, $4 million for Marino, $4 million for Dumont. That's $16 million right there in 3 players who are not good at driving offense. Again, I said this earlier this week. My dream defensive, core. I want 3 players that can actually move the puck and generate offense. I want 3 players who, maybe don't generate as much offense as the other 3, but they're better defensively, and they can be the shot suppressors. Excuse me. And Pettersson, he is that kind of player. I would love for him to have that kind of offense that we saw at the end of the regular season, where he was just using curl drags to beat defenders. Even in that series against the Rangers, he was ridiculously good with moving the puck up the ice and into the attacking zone. I really can't think of anything negative that he was on the ice for. I thought he had a tremendous series. The numbers, I do think, mainly back that up here. Yeah, I mean, 56% of the shot attempts for the Penguins when he was on the ice, 56% of the actual goals, 60% of the expected goals, 54% of the scoring chances, 61% of the high danger chances, only on the ice for 2 high danger goals against. He was a rock. I mean, honestly, that pairing with Marino was so good in the playoffs, and that's one of the main reasons why I'm hesitant to move on from both of them, and why I think I would rather see John Marino be the odd man out. I mean, Pettersson and Marino, that's the pairing that the Penguins can really throw out at anyone, and Mike Sullivan can be like, okay, you go out there and be our shutdown pairing and make sure nothing happens in the defensive zone. And that's exactly what they were during the regular season and the playoffs. And I think Ron Hextall realizes that. I don't think he's going to move either one of these players. Would I be shocked if he did? No, because I've been talking about that a lot too. But in the back of my mind, my prediction right now is that I don't think both will be moved. Now, if you can find a taker maybe for Pettersson and actually get something valuable in return, I would certainly be open to, especially if it's, a young forward that's, really ready to contribute in the NHL, or a forward that has already contributed on a team in the NHL. So the Penguins will definitely have their options. I do think, one of those 3-4 million guys is going to have to be off this team next year. Again, 16 million, almost 16 million. Geez. 12 million, excuse me. Just forget what I said with the 16 million. I don't know. This is why I was not a math major. That is just basic 3rd grade level math, and I just totally screwed that up. Again, anyways, $12 million. Glad I corrected myself there. It's the same concept though. It's too much, especially with a team that is cap strapped every year, a team that always spends up to the ceiling, and the Fenway Sports Group is going to continue that for as long as Sidney Crosby's here, and hopefully Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. So I was very happy with how Pettersson played this year. I thought he was a rock, to be honest. And again, I'll say it for the fifth time in the last 3 minutes. If that offensive game can come back out like we saw at the end of the regular season in the playoffs, I think the Penguins could really be cooking with something there. But, he's a fine second pairing shutdown defenseman. Nothing more probably. And I thought he was one of their best defensemen this year. I think outside of Chris Letang and Mike Matheson, he was their third best defenseman out of everyone that played, at least in my opinion. So that wraps up this first segment of the podcast. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into that new Penguins announcement today and what that means going forward. But before we get to that, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. You can find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's the fastest and easiest way to check on all of your favorite sports events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action that has been online where the game starts. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So let's get into this big announcement today from the Penguins. So Teena Murray was hired by the team to be their senior vice president of integrated performance. In the press release, which I have right here, it says she will oversee the hockey operations, strength and conditioning staff, rehab, sports science, and medical staff. She will also report directly to Ron Hextall. She spent the last 4 seasons with the Sacramento Kings, where she was the team's vice president of health and performance. She also led a high-performance team, including strength and conditioning, with analytics, performance medicine, mental health, performance psychology, and performance nutrition. She has over 25 years of experience working with professional athletes. This is a good move. And the big reason I say that is, the Penguins' injury curse has been very bad. It's a problem. The Penguins did not play a game this season where they were fully healthy. They have probably not played a game when they were fully healthy in 2 to 3 years at this point. And, I hope that, Teena is able to come in here and be like, oh, what the heck is going on? And, I think a big thing that, hopefully she'll put an end to is the players getting hurt during games. And this has been happening going back for a decade, I think, at this point. They get hurt during games. They come out, and then they come back into the game, and then Mike Sullivan's like, oh, yeah, they're day-to-day. They miss 3 weeks. Or he's like, oh, yeah, he's week-to-week. He misses 5 to 6 weeks. Remember, Tristan Jarry, when he broke his foot, when Anders Lee came crashing into him, he finished the game, looked totally fine. No one really noticed anything. Next day, it says, oh, he's missing from practice. It's like, oh, great, maybe it's nothing. Mike Sullivan's like, yeah, he's week to week with a lower body injury, and that comes after, I think it was either Pony or Colin Dunlap of 93.7 The Fan. They're like, yeah, we've been hearing he broke his foot. So it's just like, why is a player allowed to stay in that kind of game with that kind of injury, especially in a meaningless regular season game? That makes no sense to me. That's very, very dumb, and it's been happening far too often, I think, with this franchise. So I'm hoping Murray is able to come in here and, again, put an end to that, and also just figure out why the Penguins, of all teams, continue to have these really just weird injuries, year after year after year. I envy some of these other teams that don't go through nearly as many injuries as the Penguins do. And as soon as I, tweeted about, Murray coming in here and putting an end to the Penguins injury curse, I had a bunch of people replying, say, Godspeed or good luck. And it's like, yeah, I mean, she has her work cut out with her with that, because the Penguins, they defy just all the laws of physics with it, to be honest with you. So, I'm sure she's going to, do a great job. And, I'm curious to see, will the number of injuries go down next season, now that, she's running this staff with integrity performances, as she's a senior vice president and all that stuff. She's also worked as a strength and conditioning coach for various teams and organizations. She's worked with the Anaheim Ducks, Hartford Wolfpack, UConn, Cornell, Florida Panthers. She's been around quite a bit, to say the least. So she has a ton of experience. Congratulations to her for accepting this position. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I've grown tired of seeing Mike Matheson miss a ton of games, or just whoever player it is. Jason Zucker, for instance, this season basically missed. It was at the time, it felt like it was 3/4 of the season, even though he played in almost half the games. I would love for him to stay healthy if he's on the team next year. And we'll see. I think this could only be seen as positive news, in my opinion. So that wraps up this second segment of the show. Coming up in the third segment, we're going to get into a little bit of Flyers news today. I know some people may be a bit scared to hear that, but I promise it does relate to the Penguins. So stick around for that, coming up right after these messages. All right, I'm back on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, the big news today, on the other side of the state, John Tortorella officially hired as Philadelphia Flyers head coach. And, it is going to be peak comedy seeing him and Mike Sullivan go at it 4 to 5 times a year for the next however many years. Sullivan, as you all probably recall, he is basically, Tortorella's disciple. In Star Wars terms, he was kind of like his apprentice, or Padawan a little bit. He learned a lot of what he knows now from Tortorella, because he was Tortorella's right-hand man for many years in New York, and years before that too. So they do have a very special friendship. But this could be the move that really gets the Battle of Pennsylvania back to being what it once was. And it's sad to see what the Flyers-Penguins rivalry has become. Maybe it's because it's been pretty one-sided after the Flyers won the series in 2012. Well, I shouldn't say that. The Flyers actually played the Penguins pretty tough in 2013, 2014, 2015. I think it started to get really out of hand during the 2015-16 season. I think the Penguins have had the better of the play against the Flyers for the last 6 years. Obviously, they've had a lot more success than the Flyers have had during that time. The last time the Flyers won a playoff series, gotta say, I think it was 2011, 2012, to be honest with you. I cannot even recall the last time before that run when they beat the Penguins and then they lost to the Devils in the second round. I don't remember them winning a series since then. And, I think part of that, and plus the Penguins have gone on such, big heights, and the Flyers have just stayed mediocre or gone down a little bit. I think that's really killed the rivalry over the years. I've talked to a lot of Penguins fans, either, off, that are my friends, people that listen to this podcast. And, a lot of them have said, they don't really hate the Flyers as much anymore because the rivalry is just not the same. It's not nasty. And I'm glad that, we're not seeing a repeat of 2012 every night where awful goaltending, Aaron Asham's laying people out, James Neal's head hunting like a freaking clown. It doesn't have to be like that, but, I still, once in a while, I still want to see, an actual rivalry here because, this used to be, I think, one of the fiercest rivalries in hockey, and now it's anything but that. Again, I know a lot of Penguins fans who hate the Washington Capitals a lot more than the Flyers. I know some people who hate the Rangers and the Islanders more than the Flyers. And that sounds weird to say just because of how storied the Battle of Pennsylvania is, with so many legendary moments between the two teams, the 08 and 09 series, the Primo go in 2000, which I hate to bring up on this show, but it's a very legendary moment in the rivalry, the 2012 series, the other series in 2018 where the Penguins got their revenge on the Flyers. So many great regular season meetings between these two teams. The spectrum with the Penguins finally breaking their massive losing streak, decades ago with Mario Lemieux there. It's a shame to see how far it's truly fallen, but I do think Tortorella is potentially going to get that rivalry, going again. Um, I think of all the coaches in the NHL, he probably hates the Penguins more than anyone. I mean, remember, he called Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin whiners. I'm pretty sure that he started with New York. Definitely said it in Columbus. I'm not his biggest fan. I definitely called him a clown and some other words that I will not repeat on the show. We keep it PG here on Locked On Penguins, but this could really get the rivalry going. And I always love seeing how rowdy the crowd gets in Philadelphia, especially when they're booing Sidney Crosby and doing the Crosby sucks chant. And even though the rivalry is not what it used to be right now, I mean, I still get to hear that every time he walks in there, but it's still not nearly as bad as you see. I mean, you back in the day, they used to bring pacifiers to Wells Fargo. They had signs that had Sid photoshopped with the pacifier on his mouth. They were ruthless towards the Penguins and their fans at the Wells Fargo Center, which formerly was the Wachovia Center. That was just some of those games were flat out legendary. The Kunitz hit on Chemo Timonen from 2009 is still probably one of the biggest hits I think I've ever seen while watching the sport. It's probably going to be a bit tough at first with getting the rivalry back just because the Flyers are not that good right now. And I think, it's going to take a lot of moves to get them back to being relevant again. But I still think today is the first step to getting this rivalry back on track because, even when the games were nationally televised last year, who was going out of their way to really watch it? Outside of Penguins and Flyers fans. I mean, the arenas in Philadelphia was always dead. I mean, the team stunk. Even in Pittsburgh, outside of Sidney Crosby's 500th goal, the Penguins fans get rowdy just because they're still in win now mode. But it's just it doesn't have the same feel to it as it did even just a few years ago. And I would love to see that come back. Again, I don't need to see a bunch of dirty hits or them go back to being the Broad Street Bullies like they were when Lindros was there and Bobby Clark and Chris Pronger back in the day, Mike Richards, obviously Big Jeff Carter, Ville Leno, not Sam Gagne, Simone Gagne, et cetera, et cetera. No, we'll see. It's definitely going to be peak comedy when these two teams play. And I can't wait to see what Tortorella says about the Penguins. If they have either a questionable hit or they, beat them. I want to see what he says to the media after the game because he is always known for being very brash with them. But again, let's see. Let me know what you all think in the comments, and you can DM me this as well. Do you all think this will get the Flyers-Penguins rivalry back on track? Do you miss the rivalry between these two teams on how it used to be, or are you comfortable with the status quo right now? Let me know in the comments. You can also message me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes, or the show's Twitter at @L_Penguins. So that'll do it for this episode of the podcast. I will still have episodes Monday and Tuesday of next week. I will be on vacation, but again, the grind does not stop, to say the least. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I should be back in my normal spot back home in Richmond. So again, that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I really appreciate this. We're getting through the month of June here before you all know it. It's going to be July, and free agency and the draft are going to come, and then the show's going to be down to 3 days a week. But again, thank you all so much for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Father's Day weekend. Get your fathers a Penguins mug, Penguins wine glass, something Penguins related for Father's Day for all you Penguins fans that listen to this show. So again, thank you all so much for listening. I'll be back on Monday.